Welcome to our very first Thanatology 13 bite-sized death education for the living. This is Season 1, Episode 1, and our topic today is on why humans fear death. Death is not frightening simply because it happens. Everything that lives eventually dies. This fact alone does not explain why death unsettles humans so deeply. Death is frightening because we know it will happen to us. We anticipate it. We imagine it. We understand long before it arrives that our lives are finite. This awareness is not a small detail. It changes everything about humans and how we live. It shapes our cultures, our beliefs, our rituals, our art, and our relationships. Thanatology begins here, not with answers, but with the question of why awareness of death carries such psychological weight for our species. All living organisms encounter death, but humans encounter it differently. We do not only experience death when it happens around us, we encounter it in advance. We project ourselves into the future and imagine a time when we will no longer exist. This ability to anticipate our own death is inseparable from our intelligence. It is the same cognitive capacity that allows us to plan, to remember, to imagine possibilities, and to tell stories. Death, for humans, is not only a biological event. It is a psychological and symbolic problem. And it is that problem that death education seeks to understand. In death education, fear is often misunderstood. Fear is not evidence of weakness, immaturity, or failure. It is not something to be eliminated or corrected. Fear is information. It tells us that something meaningful is at stake. The fear of death emerges at the intersection of two forces: our instinct to survive and our ability to understand that survival is temporary. Death education begins by naming fear, not to dwell in it, but to understand what it has generated across human history. Early anthropologists noticed something striking. No known human society exists without beliefs, rituals, or stories related to death. Bronislaw Malinowski argued that death represents the supreme crisis of human life, not because it is rare, but because it threatens meaning itself. When someone dies, relationships rupture, social roles dissolve. The future imagined with that person collapses. Culture steps in at this moment, not to erase loss, but to contain it. Ritual, belief, and symbols provide structure where chaos might otherwise take hold. Death produces emotional contradictions that are difficult to hold at the same time. Survivors feel profound love for the deceased and simultaneously discomfort or fear toward the body. There is longing for the person who seems to linger alongside an acute awareness that something irreversible has occurred. These reactions are not irrational. They reflect the collapse of ordinary categories. The body is familiar yet changed. The person feels present yet absent. Meaning strains to keep up with experience. Across cultures, humans respond to death with remarkably similar practices. Loved ones gather, the body is washed, anointed, or adorned. There's a period of viewing, mourning, and eventually disposal. These acts are not symbolic extras. They are psychologically stabilizing. They mark that something has happened. They slow time. They allow grief to unfold within shared structure rather than isolation. One of the most difficult ideas for humans to confront is the possibility of complete annihilation. That a life filled with effort, striving, love, and suffering could simply end without remainder feels deeply unsettling. This discomfort is not abstract. It touches motivation, purpose, and identity. Without some sense of continuity, literal or symbolic, human life begins to feel unmoored. In the 20th century, writer and scholar Ernest Becker argued that awareness of death is the central source of human anxiety. Becker suggested that humans cannot eliminate this anxiety because it arises from intelligence itself. What humans do instead is transform it. We create meaning. We invest in projects that outlast us. We form identities that connect us to something larger than our individual lives. Building on Becker's work, psychologists developed terror management theory to explain how cultures manage death anxiety. The theory proposes that humans are caught between a biological drive for self-preservation and an intellectual awareness of inevitable death. This tension creates the potential for overwhelming fear. Cultural worldviews function as buffers against that fear. They provide explanations of reality, standards of value, and assurances of continuity. Self-esteem plays a crucial role here. Believing that one is a valuable participant in a meaningful world helps protect against existential terror. Not all forms of immortality are literal or supernatural. Humans seek continuity through children, creative work, social contribution, and collective identity. These forms of symbolic immortality allow people to feel that something of them will persist beyond their individual lifespan. This impulse is not vanity. It's a psychological response to mortality awareness. Other animals experience fear in the presence of danger. Humans experience fear in the presence of possibility. Our intelligence allows us to imagine futures that have not yet occurred, including the future in which we no longer exist. This capacity for self-awareness is the source of both our creativity and our anxiety. Cultural responses to death are not errors or illusions. They are adaptive human technologies. By reducing existential anxiety, they allow individuals to function, cooperate, and take necessary risks for survival. Fear of death, when culturally managed, becomes a stabilizing force rather than a paralyzing one. Fear is not the enemy of meaning. Fear signals that something matters deeply. When fear remains unnamed, it shapes behavior indirectly, often through avoidance or defensiveness. When fear is examined, it becomes a source of insight into what humans value and protect. Death education does not aim to remove fear. It seeks to understand how fear has shaped human life, culture, and meaning. This is not the end of the conversation. It is the threshold where the work begins. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you found this first episode of Thanatology 13 on why humans fear death both grounding and thought-provoking. Thanatology 13 is a year-long educational series exploring topics in death education in 13 minutes or less. Each episode will be released on the 13th of the month with a special Halloween bonus episode. Every episode is paired with a more in-depth written essay or missive available on the Death Education Central website for those who want to explore the ideas further. And for anyone who feels drawn to go a little deeper, additional learning and exploration materials are available with no cost and no strings attached through our online learning community. You can learn more at deatheducationcentral.com. And if this work feels meaningful to you, please like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for being here. This is where the conversation begins.